Seca Atnago that you're getting is a washed because those are super small women producers who are in a cooperative. And it's the cooperative, which also has male farmers, that together all the farmers have been able to buy a coffee washing station. So those Limu Seca Atnago farmers, they have the ability to bring their cherries to the cooperatively owned washing station and produce washed coffee. And I love that, and that's one reason why I wanted to buy that coffee, and I was really excited that Sabbath could buy it. Now we can tell those women in Atnago that there's a buyer who wants their coffee washed. So Limu is another area of Ethiopia. The zone is Jimma, and then there's a sub-area of Jimma called Limu Seca, and Atnago is the village. There's very small farmers who have probably been farming for generations, but they are members of a cooperative. The cooperative has had the foresight and the innovation to keep their coffee separate so that they can sell it as women's coffee. This is our first year bringing in Limu Seca Atnago, and so I love it that you have both the Ethiopian coffee we have the most experience with, as well as one of our newest ones. This Limu Seca Atnago is actually the one that's most parallel to what we've done in Rwanda. Like, it's finally like I've broken through. I've found a cooperative that has lots of female smallholders. They're keeping that women-grown coffee separated as they collect it, as they process it through the washing station. You have to be intentional about that if you're trying to sell women's grown coffee, right? You have to be thinking about keeping it separate when the women deliver their cherries. You have to organize your processing different so that the women's coffee is always kept in a separate production stream. Part of the story there is I have not been able to visit them yet. So that's still like out in the future. I hope I get to visit that Atnago village someday. It's really interesting what you've got. You've got the Limu Seca washed, which is from the Atnago women, who are all very small farmers. Think like, not bigger than a football field, maybe half a football field of coffee trees, right? But when they come together, it makes enough. Dahab owns 330 hectares. And she also has a very interesting story, but she's basically a relatively large farmer, probably in Ethiopian standards, middle, because some of them are huge. And she's very focused on quality, and she's relatively new. She did not grow up as a coffee farmer. Like all those Atnago women, they've probably had coffee in their family for generations. But Dahab kind of came to it as an entrepreneur. She started like, when her kids were old enough to go to school, she was like, I can do coffee full time now, and that's what I want to do. And she started getting training, she started going to all the classes, and so she's kind of building up from scratch coffee farming as a farmer. And that's why she didn't have the capital to buy a washing machine. So she said, well, we'll just do natural. And her natural was good, so I was buying it. And then you ask about, how do they decide? She did have to buy a small depulper to take the cherry off the coffee cherries to get the seeds, because she wanted to be producing her own seeds. That's as part of her quality thing. So think about like cherries that grow in Michigan. If you take off the fruit, you have a seed left and you could plant a tree. That's basically what she's doing to propagate some of her coffee trees on her farm. But then she started hearing about the anaerobic process, and she's like, oh, so if I take some of my cherries and run them through this depulper and then let them ferment without oxygen, anaerobic, in this blue tank, that creates a specialty fermented coffee that will sell for $9 per kilogram instead of $4 to $5 a kilogram on the export market. So now she's looking for, but she can only do small quantities. So she looks for customers, and she has like one in Holland, like Netherlands, Holland, and now Artisan in the US, who are buying some of her very few bags of anaerobic coffee. So that's an example of producer producing to order. Part of it's driven by the machinery and the finances she had available. And then another part of it is driven by consumer demand and an entrepreneur thinking about, hey, to double the price, I think I should try this. She and I met at a cupping of women-grown coffee at an SCA in Boston. So there's the International Women's Coffee Alliance, a really prominent, well-organized nonprofit that promotes women-grown coffee. And every year they have a cupping of all women-grown coffee at SCA. And it was at one of those cuppings that I tasted some pretty good coffee, and that was Dahab there. Being a good salesperson, bringing her coffee to Boston. She didn't have any customers in the US at that time. She only had a customer in the Netherlands. And I was like, this is really good. We should try to work together. So we worked it out. And that first, 21, 22, we had small amounts of her coffee coming over. End of 2023, I was able to visit her farm, and it was even more beautiful than I thought. I knew she was doing something unique because geographically, she is in what we call a biosphere. So she has a sustainability story that's unique to her geographic location on the edge of basically a protected forest. So she has to farm in ways that help protect that national agricultural treasure. And when you're there, you feel it. She's got these huge tall trees that are many stories above her farmed coffee trees that are basically the floor of the forest. And she loves that. That's part of what she is passionate about as a coffee farmer. Because she's like, I can see how with these coffee trees, we can help preserve the forest. We can help the local community with a number of different things. Like she also has a bee farm on her coffee farm because bees are pollinators. So they help her coffee trees be healthy, and they produce honey. And so she's selling coffee honey. And so like at the trade shows, when you go to her booth, she'll show you her green coffee, and then she'll have little tasting things of taste these different honeys because we get different tastes throughout the year from our bees. So she's doing all these cool things. She's like a sustainability, super passionate person. There are so many roasters who would love that. They want to be about an industry that's doing the right thing for the earth, right? And to know that their coffee is grown by someone who's taking that much care will be a great win-win. It's a woman-owned coffee company. The Rwandan woman is Jackie Turner. She has the most powerful survived the genocide story. I mean, tragic in so many ways. Her parents were killed, half of her, I think maybe all, but many of her siblings were killed in horrible ways. But she survived, and I would not do her justice to try to summarize her survival story, but she has a truly amazing survival story. She now lives in the UK with her daughter and met an investor who was interested in her concept of somehow giving back to Rwanda through the coffee trade. So with this investor, he helped inject some money and some business to help her buy a washing station. They built it from scratch, and they have used some very innovative methods of purchasing the coffee from the farmers in the area. It's different than what goes on a lot, which is, well, let's buy the cherry at the cheapest we can from these farmers so that we can sell it at a higher price. And it's basically kind of cheating the farmers. But Kanini wasn't going to do that, because of Jackie, and her mission is to give back to Rwanda and Rwandan people. And so they have an innovative pay for quality system. They have a very strict receiving process where they help the farmers understand what they can do to improve their quality. And they make it very clear, like, you will earn this extra amount if you can bring us higher quality cherry next time. And they built a really innovative coffee washing station. I got to tour it, and they were telling me all about how it has these special curves because the guy from the UK was an engineer, and he's like, I think it would be better to have these channels curvy instead of hard angles, 90-degree angles, like a lot of them are in Rwanda. So they have an innovative washing station and some innovative purchasing policies with the farmers in their area.